Welcome to Truth by Billie Beene. Today's date, December 19, 2025. Time in Texas, about 11 a.m. A flash update. Some of the sources I'll use: BREITBART, HURR, Sequo's aggregate site, economic collapse, Stephen Burns, space weather on YouTube, formerly Suspicious Observers, Mike from around the world. Some of the things we'll cover. Atlas, could it equal a spacecraft? And President Trump giving the U.S. military $1,776 bonus in December. Way to go, President Trump. Congress introduces bills to okay mercenaries hitting Venezuela plus. And Russia to take on Europe? What's happening in Taiwan? And with the Brown, Bondi Beach, and MIT prof shootings. So let's get started. So the big news today is Atlas coming in around the sun, the closest to Earth. It will be something like 270 kilometers or 170 miles. According to Stephen Burns, geophysicist, it will be in this position closest to Earth for 3 to 4 days. Mike from around the world says that Atlas has aligned its axis. So we know a circle, and it's believed now many vehicles inside, has cloaking on the front. So it's being put forth by Mike from around the world that this group has aligned its axis with the sun, which is impossible for a natural object to do. Therefore, it's highly likely Atlas is a spacecraft or a group of spacecrafts. We do know that NASA, the European Space Agency, the Chinese Space Agency, and so on, have put forth some unexplained to the people of America and other nations, a planetary defense network against Atlas. Do they know what it is? Most likely. Are they telling Americans nor other people of the world? No, they're not. So that's going on, and President Trump recently put forth the U.S. will return to the moon by 2028. Now, many people in the know believe that the U.S. has had bases on Mars and the moon since about the 1950s. So we see some level of disclosure coming out from the U.S. government. And we have this going on. So we have things in space impacting the Earth and giving the Earth catastrophic weather events. So we have in Washington, Oregon, down to Northern California, also impacting Colorado. We have an atmospheric river flash flooding occurring along the West Coast. But what is most alarming are the level of winds. Hurricane force wind, 75 miles per hour, is a norm, with gust in Washington, in Wyoming at 144 miles per hour, Washington State 142 miles per hour, Oregon 138 miles per hour. California is expected to receive 30 inches of rain. Along Washington, Oregon, they've already received 2 feet of rain. Some highways in Washington and Oregon have received such catastrophic damage that they will be closed for months. So that's going on. We do see also thousands of people evacuating from Washington State and Oregon. So that's going on. And in Colorado, they're having wildfires impacted negatively by wind gusts up to 120 miles per hour, believed to be associated with this atmospheric river system moving in on the west coast. So that's going on. We have this reported by Space Weather on YouTube, formerly Suspicious Observers. An unusual snow event in the Middle East, UAE, which then melted and caused flash flooding and water spouts. So we're seeing unusual weather, I believe, produced by what we're experiencing from space. Oh, yeah. And Mike from around the world said many people are now experiencing the effects of microwave waves from the sun, which cause an individual to suddenly feel like a woman would describe a hot flash. And people are experiencing these rapid increases in body temperature, even when they're in freezing outside temperatures. These are microwaves coming in from the sun, penetrating Earth as our electromagnetic shield, we know, is down 55% since the 1600s. So that's going on. And it's possible that this atlas could be impacting the sun, also causing these microwaves. So we, the people, are receiving very little scientific information from our science space-based organizations. And we have this atlas also coming out from multiple sources. Could be, as Mike from around the world suggested, a spacecraft or group of spacecrafts who have on board hostile ETs. So that's going on. And we have this question: why did President Trump send NVIDIA chips to China, which are second-generation technology? And it's believed the U.S. is sending these to China for some reason. And the U.S. Treasury will benefit 25% of the total sales. And it's believed this will be billions of dollars. So we have this. Also, the U.S. Now is requiring a new requirement for visas for people coming into the U.S., that they must provide the U.S. with a 5-year history of their social media. So that's going on. And we have this. David Rodriguez had an interesting interview yesterday on his channel, a YouTube channel, talking about Venezuela. We know that President Trump puts forth right now, he's going after Venezuela and Colombia right now. We have Peru, whose Congress has said over a week ago that U.S. military troops and equipment could pass through Peru. Since it's believed now President Trump also plans to hit Colombia, this would be a direct route, Colombia and Venezuela, through Peru from the Pacific Ocean, as well as a hit from a different direction from the Caribbean by the U.S. And this individual puts forth that after the U.S. takes Colombia and Venezuela, it will also take Nicaragua, that's located in Central America, Cuba, and also Brazil. And the size of Brazil looks like almost 1/3 of the U.S. And also says Obama will be arrested soon by the U.S. military or his double. It's unknown now if Obama, HRC, the Clintons, and so on are actually still flesh and blood. So that's going on. And we have in South America now pro-U.S. nations Argentina, Chile, Bolivia, Ecuador. So that's going on. It's believed this move against Venezuela, Colombia, also Nicaragua, Cuba, Brazil, is to bring about a unification of South America, Central America, and Mexico with the U.S. And that would also later include Canada and Greenland. So that's going on. It's also being predicted on David Nino Rodriguez's channel that mid-2026, President Trump will resign, J.D. Vance will step in, and that then J.D. Vance will also be elected president for 2 terms after he finishes President Trump's current term. I've heard this from other sources already. And that NASA is very quiet about Atlas, and they are not giving out information, even though their actions by NASA, the European Space Agency, indicate that they believe it's something hostile, reminiscent of the movie Independence Day. So that's going on. And we have this, that there is a high alert in the U.S. military and also European militaries with regard to Atlas. And it's also being put forth on the David Nino Rodriguez channel that there will be a peace agreement between Ukraine and Russia January 15th, at which time Russia will take some time to rearm before it takes Europe. So we'll have to see. This sounds like a World War III setup coming, doesn't it? The U.S., Canada, Mexico, South America, Russia, Ukraine, and Europe. And we have this. Redacted brought out some new numbers with regard to what's going on in Ukraine and Russia and this conflict. The Ukraine military dead, 1.3 million. And active duty military NATO plus mercenaries are about 300,000 dead, killed inside Ukraine. And Ukraine civilians killed by Russia inside Ukraine, about 2,000. Civilians injured by Russia inside Ukraine, about 3,000. Ukraine civilians killed by the Ukraine military, about 67,000. And the missing Ukraine civilians is about, inside Ukraine, is about 20,000. And we have this, numbers for Russia from Redacted. The number of Russian military killed, 642,000. And that includes 182,000 mercenaries. Russian civilians killed by Ukraine inside Russia, 52,000. Russian civilians injured inside Russia by Ukraine, 77,000. Russian civilians killed inside Russia by Russia, 21. So those are some contrasting numbers. We have dead of the Ukraine military, 1.3 million, dead of the Russian military, 642,000. And we have this coming out from Hal Turner. So we know we've been hearing about billions of dollars invested in a wealth fund by Russia inside Europe, primarily in Belgium, and that the EU wanted to steal that money. The U.S. now pulls the rug out from under the EU. The U.S. says in the past 24 hours that the Russian assets will be incorporated into a settlement of peace between Ukraine and Russia. Then the EU had an emergency meeting and came out within 24 hours after the U.S. statement that the EU will not confiscate the Russian assets. And it's been illegal what the EU has been doing. They've been confiscating the interest that these billions of Russian assets were accumulating on an annual basis. So the EU now says it's not going to touch the Russian billions. So instead, the EU is going to borrow money to send another $90 billion to Ukraine. So the EU continues to diss its own people. And now we have this. So we know that President Trump has put forth a blockade of oil tankers going to and from Venezuela. Venezuela responds to the Navy blockade. Venezuela deploys its Navy to escort these sanctioned oil tankers, which President Trump has said the U.S. Navy will secure. So this will be interesting. And we have this. President Trump has sent a very positive message to the U.S. military in his recent national address, sending a check right now to all U.S. military of $1,776 commemorating the beginning of the U.S., called a warrior dividend. So that's going on. And we have this regarding the U.S. and the naval blockade. The U.S. Navy will blockade sanctioned oil tankers to and from Venezuela, and the Navy has received orders, President Trump to Pete Hegseth, to the U.S. military to escort these sanctioned vessels. And now we have Maduro putting out the Venezuela Navy to secure these same vessels. Okay. Venezuela. We have in Congress, Senator Mike Lee, Republican Utah, put forth a bill in the Senate, and Representative Tim Russett, Republican Tennessee, put forth a similar bill in the House. And what this bill does, under the U.S. Constitution, called letters of marque and reprisal to control pirates. So we see the bills being put forth based on a part of the U.S. Constitution. And they put these forth in the House and the Senate Thursday, which will allow the U.S. government to hire mercenaries to stop cartel smuggling, and it's called a Cartel Reauthorization Act, and it authorizes President Trump to hire private companies, mercenaries, to seize cartel property and people on the land and sea outside the U.S. So that's going on. And we have this. Yeah, we had a jury find a Wisconsin jury found a Milwaukee judge guilty, Hannah Dugan, of obstructing ICE from arresting an illegal that she was to see in her court. The illegal came in with his attorney. She was advised ICE was out in the hall to arrest him. She showed the attorney and illegal a secret way to get out of the courtroom. ICE then caught up with the illegal and arrested him outside the courtroom. She's been found guilty by a Wisconsin jury of obstructing justice. She could get up to 5 years in prison. So that's going on. And we have this, China. So apparently the U.S. is going to be at war in Mexico, South America, Cuba, Central America, but also around Taiwan. The U.S. is giving Taiwan the largest amount of weapons it's ever received in its history, worth $11 billion, including HIMARS, ATACMS, howitzers, tracking vehicles, wire-guided missiles, anti-tank missiles, Harpoon, anti-ship missiles, and spares and repair parts for the Super Cobra attack helicopters. So apparently the U.S. will also be taking some type of action around Taiwan. And we have this. Okay. So we saw the shooting recently at Brown University in Rhode Island. We also saw an MIT prof killed in Massachusetts. Now, the group, I believe, who most likely were responsible for coordinating and putting in place these shootings at Brown University and the MIT prof, and possibly connected to the Bondi Beach shootings in Australia. Okay, that same group. Oh, and the Brown University shooting and the murder of the MIT prof were done by the same person. His name is Claudio Manuel Neves Valente, 48. A Portuguese national, found dead in New Hampshire in a storage unit. Now being put forth as the shooter for both Brown and the MIT prof. Now it's interesting that the law enforcement is saying they can't say how long Claudio Valente had been dead inside the storage unit. Really? As far as I know, we have very modern methods of determining how long a body has been dead. Temperature, skin, and so on. Very modern. But no. U.S. law enforcement can't determine how long he's been dead. Now, Israel is putting forth that there's a tie between the Bondi Beach, Australia shootings We know that was of Jewish people observing Hanukkah celebration, Jewish, and that the MIT prof was Jewish. We do not know what is the tag to the Brown University 2 students who were killed. But Israel is putting forth that there was one party behind the Bundy Beach shooting in Australia, the Brown University shooting in Rhode Island, the murder of the MIT prof in Massachusetts. And we're all going to be surprised, aren't we? Israel says the responsible party is Iran. So this concludes my flash. It's good to be in prayer for America, President Trump, the U.S. military, and world peace. I love you, and I'll see you soon.